Why are you
Would you
still here?
rather
Leave
have
already.
proficiency in all tools or have +1 added to your proficiency bonus?
Oh, proficiency bonus, 100%. Because you use
Yeah.
it in literally everything. The tools are great and they're underutilized, and I love them. But proficiency bonus is just so fucking powerful. It's good in everything, right? Like that bumps up saves and skills and attacks, and it's yeah, that's what I need.
Yeah. I would generally say yes, that. I do have one character that was a changeling, and anytime she was in a different form, had proficiency in a different tool. So like that persona was proficient in whatever that persona was. So that I did find very helpful. Like if the party needed a certain thing, she would have to find a way to turn into that person. Like she couldn't just do it in the middle of a bar and suddenly
Yeah.
be that person because that's suspicious. But but I did find it very helpful to have those little like, oh, we need to forge some documents. Okay, I know somebody who could do that.
Let me go see if they're in the bathroom over here behind a closed door.
Yeah.
Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, I think I would pick the +1 to proficiency bonus too, though I feel like there would be plenty of argument depending on the style of campaign you have. Like, say, if you had to choose, a campaign might be very heavy in the world building stuff where you're creating a lot. And so then lots of players might want just to be proficient in all tools, and that is a more important part of the DMing style as well.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome back to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Today, we are kicking off our discussion on downtime in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me today are Casey and Pepperina, and this episode is called The Magic of Crafting.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of Dungeon Masters is going to kick off our 3-part discussion on downtime activities with a good long look at one of the most hated mechanics in 5th edition, crafting.
Crafting, of course, is a long-standing fantasy trope that revolves around the creation of items, often with magical properties. How have you handled crafting at your tables?
Let's roll dice. I got it too.
I got a 4.
9.
Going first with a 9, Casey.
Woo!
Wow.
So,
So good.
how have you seen crafting at your tables?
Where I have seen this is very excited younger players wanting really awesome weapons. And so coming in at level 3, they want to pay whatever they need to pay for this beefy, crazy, amazing, like magical battle axe. And I'm like, okay, slow your roll. And so I've had to give them creative freedom, but it's in like the non-magical area because it's like you're too early. You're too early to have something that powerful. So I let this player design the like battle axe and then talk with a like smith, and they actually were an artificer like that they talked to. And so designed it to have potential to get magical +1 or whatever they wanted to, but it didn't have it just yet. It was just a custom weapon. And it took time, it took money. And so they had to stick around in the town longer than they planned because this one player was like, but my axe.
Yeah.
That was the biggest instance.
How did the other players handle that waiting around? Were they cool with it, or?
Most of them were. It kind of forced them to figure out things to do in their downtime in the town. So it kind of made them think more about that than just like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the tavern and have a long rest and we're heading out in the morning. It's like, actually you can have your long rest, but then you have the whole next day. What do you want to do? So it pushed them a bit. Didn't really annoy them that much, but it was like, oh shit, I have to think about what I want to do and not just like waste this opportunity to do stuff.
Yeah.
I mostly DM one shots, so I haven't dealt with crafting as a DM much because you don't sit around and craft things in one shots. But as a player, I've, definitely wanted to craft things and had other players at the table craft things and have to be that person that just like, what am I going to do now? Well, they do this. We had a cleric that was a follower of Lathander, and he was obnoxious about being a follower of Lathander and like told everybody about the line of Lathander. And he took up, we were like on a ship for a while. And so one of the crew members did woodworking and taught him how to like woodwork symbols of Lathander that he could then every town we went in handed them out to people. And like he was almost creating a cult of Lathander with this, with how he role played it. And it was one of those like you love to hate it. Yeah, so he like that's what he wanted to do though, and it was very much role playing with his character and made sense with it. I've had a character that wanted to make like healing potions and stuff. But we were portal jumping and went to like different worlds. So she didn't know if the same ingredients made the same thing in those worlds. So that was interesting to find out as well.
I've run into crafting a lot, but it's been really subtle. It's not been, I want to make a magic sword +1, right? Like we do finally have an artificer in the group now, Casey, that like you picked up what are you, 4 levels of artificer? 5 levels? How deep in it? How many paladin levels do you have?
5. I'm 5 artificer, 1 paladin. Yeah.
Okay. So we do have an artificer in the group, but the crafting shit has come up very by the way, right? It hasn't really been a spotlight or a focus at all in game. When Dan was playing Lockie, his gnome, we ended up dealing with a lot of tinkerer shit. But the most important thing that he ever did was just build a prosthetic leg after he lopped off Megan's characters, right? So he felt bad, and then made a prosthetic. So there was that. But again, that was all hand waved, and we had downtime like weeks passed while Megan recovered and stuff. So I don't think we spent more than about 10 minutes addressing that ever over the span of the entire campaign. I've had Jess way back in the day and Charlie and Mieka all ask about herbalism kits and making healing potions. I've had players that have dug into, in 5th edition anyway, they've dug into, can I make a spell? Can I make a scroll? Can I make these little magic items? Can I recharge a wand? But no one has sat there and said, I want to make this magic item that does this thing. They cast a ward, which will have a magical effect. They'll put the ward on an item, but they don't craft a magic item, right? So it was a lot more intensive in previous editions, but there were a lot of workarounds to get past the time or the cost or whatever. So one of the largest complaints that I see online is about the crafting rules, and we've never really played with it. And anytime it starts to come up, I hand wave it right there in the moment and say, it'll take you roughly this amount of time. We're going to make a couple of rolls and we'll figure it out. Because when we are more organic with it and we go off what feels right, it feels better in the game than the bullshit mechanics for it. And we're going to get into that today, right? So, and I understand the logic behind it. I just don't agree with it. So before we go any further down this road, though, let's cut to a quick info break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on Dungeon Master tips in 5th edition. For all those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. If you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
Before we get into this crazy-ass week on the It's a Mimic podcast, and by the way, I hope everybody made it through April Fool's all right, I just want to say thank you to our 2 newest Patreon members, Christopher and David. Thank you so much for supporting us. This week on the It's a Mimic channel, things are nuts. It's going to be a lot, and I'm just going to run through it all really quickly, including what happened at the end of last week, because we've just been dropping shit on you guys. It has been raining episodes. So, not only did we have 2 mailbags revolved around Star Trek, the first one The first one being me and Sean and Tyler sitting down and talking about Star Trek and focusing on a whole mailbag episode on it. But then Brad and Megan and Mieka also wanted to sit down and record one, and their whole thing was that they don't know anything about Star Trek. They just wanted to be assholes. So they were. Also, we released an April Fool's Day Undead episode where it was based on specters and poltergeists, and the ladies said some very lovely things about yours truly. Then on the Patreon for April Fool's Day, we also released an episode about the PDF races, which are the Grung, Lokatha, and Tortles. And to top it all off, we kicked off April with a brand new series, the Touring the Multiverse, and it is based on Theros this time, where Mieka and Casey take us through kind of the Greek-themed adventures and the gods that are there and just everything you can get up to in that Magic the Gathering setting. Also, though, on the Patreon today being released is the homebrew episode that is long overdue, where we continue talking about my homebrew pantheon and we start to get into some of the conflicts between the gods. Tomorrow is the last episode of the L5R series, and the patrons are going to get a blooper reel for what season 2 had. Then after that, we're going to release another episode that got delayed because of our new computer and transferring everything over, and it's going to be part 2 of this conversation we're having right now on Downtime. That is going to release at the same time that the campaign builder gets another update, where Tyler and I sit down and talk about why it's so important to paint the picture, especially in Tier 3. And if you thought that was a lot of episodes for this week, you're right, but there's still 2 more. We have a Legend Lore coming out where we finally sit down and talk about the Book of Many Things, and this one, because it's a new release, is going to be on all the public channels, and we actually went out and got the full box set that has the cards in it with the special little rule book and everything. So we're going to tear into that. And then also, we wrap up with another conversation with Robert, where we're going to be building a settlement in his Domain of Dread. So there's a lot coming this week, and before the next Tuesday, we're going to have even more, so we're kicking off next week with a proper mailbag episode and even more homebrew stuff. So lots of episodes to make up since we had that unexpected hiatus, but now we're back, we're catching up, it's going to be crazy. But for now, let's get back to the episode. The very first thing we should talk about before we get into anything else with crafting is the idea of buying and selling magic items, because that's the big thing with the downtime is it's all well and good to get your +1 sword and you deck out everybody else, but you only have a certain number of infusions and you can only do so much due to the time constraints. You end up making a lot of little shit, and I know a lot of characters like to sell that. So I want to talk about identifying, buying, and selling magic items before we truly get into the crafting. First and foremost is identifying a magic item, because a lot of the time when we sell something, we're not crafting a magic item, we just find a thing we don't need. Everybody's got a +2 sword or whatever they need, and you find a +1 pike, we're going to fucking sell that nonsense, right? What's the gold for this? But there's some general rules. First of all, not all magic items look magical at first glance. So it's hard to tell just by looking. And honestly, not every NPC tells the truth. So if you're going to buy it from a merchant, I absolutely love, although I caution against at some tables, I absolutely love selling magic items that aren't magical, or selling a magic item that has a charge. You thought it was going to be all the time, but it has 1 charge and then it's done, right? Or a scroll where they lie about the difficulty of it. You've got to make a ridiculous high roll for it. So I play very, very fast and loose with magic because I want it to be weird and strange and difficult and dangerous. You shouldn't always know what you're going to get with magic because it's scary. However, 5th edition loves players more than it loves dungeon masters or story or plot or character development. They do love hero fantasy. And so they want you to pick up the sword and go, ah, this is a +3 sword. I know this now. According to the Dungeon Master's Guide, simply holding an item is enough to understand immediately that an item has magical properties. I hate that. That's bullshit, and you've just stolen a ton of plots from me. So fuck you, Dungeon Master's Guide, right off the bat. The DMG also says that the Identify spell is the fastest way to understand a magic item's properties, which is true. Identify is a first level divination spell that takes a minute to cast and requires you to touch the object. You learn the magical properties of magic items, if it requires attunement, the number of changes it has, and if it's being affected by other spells, which is really neat. It's a little sidebar about the identify spell because we never talk about it, but everybody knows it. If someone's being affected by magic, you can use the spell to figure out what's happening to them. I think I'm cursed. Let me cast Identify. We can figure that out.
I would not have thought to use it
Yeah.
that way.
Everyone will use Detect Magic, and you'll be like, yes, there is this school of magic. But Identify will tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
So,
Well, now that we know.
yeah. So the Identify spell is actually really useful. It's also a ritual. So it would cost, I think, 11 minutes because it's 10 minutes plus whatever the regular casting time is. And Identify normally takes 1 minute. So, however, you have to touch that object for the entirety of that ritual, right? So if you don't have the Identify spell, and this is where I rage, then you can spend a short rest just focusing on an item. And at the end of the short rest, you know what the item can do and how to use it. Fuck. Also, and this I kind of like, you can taste test potions to learn their properties. You don't use up any of the potion by doing it, and it doesn't affect you. You just learn what it can do by tasting it. I don't hate that. I think it's neat. But I also think that that's hilarious when you just mix a poison in with them. So
Yeah. Like it's just I dip my finger in the black ichor in the potion bottle.
Yeah.
And
I like the idea though of like when you taste test a potion to learn what it does, it's a potion of fly, you feel lighter, and like for just a half a second you like lift up inside your own shoes and then you land again. Like, oh, it's fly. Okay. Right. So you should have
I
just,
would
like,
have
a
some
really,
sort of effect happen.
yeah.
Just a
something
tiny
really
one.
minor. So also, it says that there might be physical clues like etchings or symbols, and using the item without knowing what they're for should give contextual clues as well. So, like if you've got a wand, or if you've got, let's say, a hammer, and the hammer, you can use it as a weapon and it's going to do fire damage. It's just going to spark more when you use it as a hammer, or it's going to make things it hits glow, right? You should be able to tell that there's something going on because there's indicators physically on the hammer itself. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't play with enough, is the physical description of the magical items that they're using. Things should glow, things should hover, things should rotate. There should be runes that pulse. There should be something happening. The variant rule here is that you can make it so short rests don't automatically reveal things. That's a variant. That should be the standard. And maybe even the Identify spell gives you clues, but not every piece of information. My favorite thing to do, and the thing that I've done in the past, is when you cast Identify, you then have to roll on a wisdom check. It's usually investigation, or sometimes it's insight, depending on the nature of the item. But when you do that, depending on what you roll, I will then give you information about the history of the item as well. If you roll like a 25 with it, you know who crafted it and how long ago. Was it used in a major battle? Like, you get magical knowledge about it. I really like obfuscating the truth behind things, making it very difficult for people to understand the base level. But if you are good enough, if this is what you do, then you should just be really good at it and know a lot about these items. So there are lots of places that you can buy magic items once you figured out that they are magic. Then some places you can sell them as well. I sat down and I just kind of picked my brain and went through a lot of the books as well to see where people can go buy stuff, specifically magic items. Remember, 5th edition is supposed to be low magic, so there's not supposed to be a whole lot of magical shops around or places to go buy and sell. But I mean, honestly, the way I've seen D&D played, there's a magic shop in every town, right? So the kinds of places you would find them would be like magic emporiums, magical auctions, which I think are always neat and fun, magic shops, specialized magic shops. So like you got a magic shop that's just like general, oh, come in and buy your potions and wands and staffs. But then you also have your specialized ones like, hey, we do scrolls and only scrolls. They're traveling merchants, so you might have to go to their carriage or their ship. Or they can just be a wandering merchant that just has inside their trench coats 7 or 8 wands. You want to buy a wand, kid? Go to a bazaar or a marketplace. There are pawn shops, traders, scribes, go find an alchemist or an apothecary. There are going to be weird women and medicine men. There will be magic academies that are going to be able to trade either gold or other magic items for powerful magic items. Temples and monasteries might want to take on the guardianship or get rid of something they deem as cursed. There'll be certain monsters like genies, fae, devils that are totally going to deal in magic items. And of course, black markets, which is everyone's favorite place to go. And if your black market is a literal market, that's fun and interesting and neat. But I like the black market where like, oh yeah, we're going to sell this on the black market. It's kind of like the internet's like the cloud. There's no such thing as a cloud. There is not a cloud of information out there. You're storing something on someone else's machine. That's it. The black market is, I know a guy who'll meet you in the back alley. He will sell this for this much money.
Yeah.
But remember, whatever your establishment is, it should have some unique and crazy details. The size should be weird. The shape of it should be weird. The lighting should be different than you're expecting. It should either be completely bare and empty or just jam-packed and cluttered with things. And your vendor themselves needs to be unique and exotic and eccentric and weird. I like to put things in extra-dimensional spaces. As a matter of fact, Casey, you ran into the last time that there was like a real big magic vendor, or you guys get whatever you want. You had to go into the land of the bags of holding, where it exists. There's a series of hallways, and behind every door is someone else's bag of holding. And you had to go through there and deal with a mind flayer that had a giant squid that was helping him. And he would give you whatever you wanted because he had access to every bag of holding in existence. But he'd need something in return. And you guys ended up drawing from the deck of many things, which was fucking wild. So
Yep, it was very fun.
But
Also
it was
very
very
scary.
yeah. When it comes to buying a magic item, the DMG just says that it should be hard to find people who are willing to trade due to the rarity of magic items, but that's going to depend on your world, right? Since the Dungeon Master's Guide came out, though, 5th edition has essentially relaxed on the infrequency of magic items, and most games I know that are being run, they do what I like to call wallpaper magic, where it's not deep. You don't have a whole lot of magic items. You just have really shallow magic items. There's just a lot of little things like, hey, this lantern that I can magically light with a snap of my fingers. These are details in the room that do not affect the overall plot. When we have the all-powerful magical sorcerer, he demonstrates that by having his broom automatically sweeping the corner without anybody holding it, right? Like, it's very simplistic, very basic cantrip level shit all of the time. Because magic exists like that at a surface level, you know that it's got to go deeper, but it might be rare. So it's up to the dungeon master to figure out how rare it's going to be to trade, because magic items, if you go low magic and you've got a bunch of them, that's going to put a target on your back as well. And that's going to be an interesting plot hook as bandits and rivals come looking for the magic items you're carrying. Xanathar's Guide to Everything doubles down on the idea of finding a vendor of magic items, and that it should be difficult to do. And it gives us a number of points. It should take a lot of time and gold to find an appropriate buyer for magic items. A work week, which again, that's like 8 days, because it's a 10-day week in the Forgotten Realms. So a work week and 100 gold pieces worth of trying to make contacts. Once you've spent these resources, you make a persuasion roll. You can spend more work weeks and more increments of 100 gold pieces to add bonuses at +1 for each resource spent like this, up to a total of 10. So if you want to spend 10 weeks and 1,000 gold pieces, you can get +10 to your persuasion roll. If you're in a low magic setting, you can add a negative modifier. If you're in a high magic campaign, you can add a positive modifier. All that just kind of makes fucking sense to me. You then compare the outcome of the roll to the table on page 126 in Xanathar's, and it will tell you how many magic items from which table in the Dungeon Master's Guide that you will have available to show your players. The damn thing is, I am now stopping everything to flip 10,000 different books to find pages to make sure like this becomes not just something I can hand wave in downtime. This is an encounter now. And it's a big, important, meaningful encounter that we should remember. And if we're going to get into this, then we have to put that work into what that vendor or what that establishment is going to be like, right? So then, depending on rarity, you add a price from the table in Xanathar's, and if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you can also add a complication, like the seller is murdered before the sale, the item is cursed, or it's tied to a cult. There's a helpful D12 table of plot hooks like that in Xanathar's right around all the buying. When you want to sell a magic item, again, Xanathar's tells you to make it difficult and interesting. Thieves and con artists are always a problem, along with grizzled university professors with whips who think your artifacts belong in a museum. That being said, finding a buyer should take 1 work week and 25 gold pieces to get an offer based on a persuasion check again. There are base prices listed in the Xanathars, and they're insane. 4,000 gold pieces for a rare item just goes to show you how you shouldn't be handing out +3 weapons. Because they're just going to turn around and fucking sell it. Again, we get a complications table, but this one is half as long and includes things like your enemy secretly buys the weapon and uses it against you, or a sorcerer claims your item is a birthright and demands you hand it over, or things that just end up in murder. It's just murder.
It's just
Your
murder.
players will just be killers by the end of the encounter.
I mean,
So-
aren't they already?
Well, yes. So, I've got a couple of questions about this before we move on. So, before we get into crafting. So let's grab dice and roll initiative. 11.
14.
16. Same
Same order. All right, Casey. How do you feel about the buying and selling rules in 5th edition?
I like that they exist. As somebody who, like, the campaign I'm running with my family right now, they are actually looking for some way to bring back some friends who have been basically in a version of petrified and frozen. And so they are low level, but they're needing to find greater restoration and a way to use it. So this is going to help me a lot because I want it to be the adventure they're on, which, you know, might take weeks or months in the campaign, is to go find sellers of magic items or powerful mages or powerful sorcerers that like may task them to do something else in order for them to help and all of that. And this gives me some mechanics or some guidelines on other magic stuff they might come across, or how to lay out which vendors they find and which ones, like, depending on if they do rolls, which ones they encounter. They're absolutely going to go talk to some black market stuff and then get in a whole bunch of trouble, and there will be murder. And so I like it because this is new-ish to me in DMing. So I like having a guide. I also see where I am probably going to simplify it more than what we're going to dig into for the mechanics and math.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used those rules, like it taking a work week to because in like your sessions, say you play once a month and your session was combat for this session, like how much time is that? That's a few minutes that like real time or like game time that went by during that combat. It would take forever to get a full work week worth of gameplay, and by then you have forgotten what it was exactly that you were trying to buy or sell or who you've talked to. It could be 6 months by the time a work week has went through, real time. But I do like it should just be every town that you go into, you could sell magic items or buy magic items. They should be more rare than that, but I don't think I'd put the time on it for me, because it's so like time in game is so weird that it could be this game was a few minutes long in game, or this game was months long,
Right.
Yeah, you definitely need to think about this as downtime getting its own chunk of the campaign, right? And there's no time in the published modules for you to do that. This does feel like it's going to be homebrew, where your DM turns to you and says, hey, you guys have 28 days before the next event. What do you want to do with your downtime? Oh, we're going to sell some magic items. Great. While you're waiting for that week, what else are you doing, right? So
yeah,
it does feel that way. I like giving a lot of space for downtime and for playing in town. And we do a lot of, you get back to town and you've got a day or a couple of days or a week of just chilling out. What do you want to do? Who are you going to talk with? What are you going to try to accomplish? So that we can flesh out the characters' lives as we tell a kind of longer, bigger campaign, because we want to breathe in this world. When you're doing Dungeon of the Mad Mage, you don't have time for this shit. In Tomb of Annihilation, there's a death curse happening. Get that shit going, right? You tell me which village in Barovia you're going to be hanging out at for 2 fucking weeks to find someone to sell magic items to and someone to buy them from, right? Like it's a bit intense and insane, and I I don't like these rules, but I understand why they exist and why they are the way they are, so that it discourages too much magic shit. Because again, they don't want you to have magic items. We talk about the imbalance of Dungeons and Dragons at higher levels. And it's because DMs can't help themselves but give magic items because we're sick and tired of giving rewards as just gold pieces or experience, right? Like there's got to be something else. So it ends up often being little magic items, and if they're not useful, the players want to sell it. So here we are. We end up with the imbalance. This kind of throttles that a little bit. But I would change all of that. I just like having a merchant in town. Like when you go to the village, there's nowhere to buy magic items. You may find the weird woman that lives on the edge of the village who deals in potions and elixirs, but you brews them herself and you're rolling on a random table for some of it, right?
Yeah.
But by the time you get into a city, there should be a couple of places to go. So
Yeah. And I think you gotta like this is where the cost has to be, I think, realistic to what they outline in the book, where like it is very expensive. So if your party has accumulated a lot of like group loot and group money along the way, great, but it still might not be enough for some sort of crazy magic item that you're looking for. And so you're going to have to find jobs to do to build money. And that might be part of the downtime or in that work week is, all right, we have to come up with, 2,000 more gold this week. How are we going to do it? Who's going to do what?
yeah.
But that means you gotta then run a campaign that focuses on like managing the gold, because lots of times that gets hand waved a lot.
Yeah.
But so you have to decide how intricate you want to be on tracking the money involved.
And I'll tell you this right now. My players have never been able to manage their money appropriately. They just
No.
do not know how much gold they have. Ever.
No. Like 2 sessions ago, you told Dan, it's like, Dan, there's no way you have only that much gold. Like you have like at least 1,000 gold more than that. And Dan's like, oh.
You spent a year being the most popular entertainer in the realm. Why do you think you have 40 gold pieces? Fuck. We talked about this.
Yeah. See, I've played games though where I played it for a full year and did not ever spend a piece of gold. Like she was a druid monk. She needed nothing. Like
well,
she created her own food. She could sleep in the forest. Like she needed nothing.
We did that essentially in the last campaign too, where you guys were on the run so often. There was no time in town to spend money and go to a shop, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we didn't want to stroll down the street.
No.
Yeah. See, I would also add to this section real quick that based on where you are, if you are selling items, I think you have to manage how much they are willing to buy them for. Like if you are in a small town and your players are trying to sell a magic item, like that shopkeeper who has no magic items is gonna be like, I will give you 25 gold pieces for it. Nobody around here is gonna buy that. Like I'm going to have to work harder to sell this for more than that. So
there are rules about selling or just about how much magic items cost. And I'm frustrated because they don't give you an exact number and then let you adjust it by a percentage as you want, right? There's like, it's around 500 gold pieces for an uncommon item or whatever the numbers are.
Yeah.
But they do that so that you can adjust it based on the circumstances of you trying to buy or sell, right? So I think the rule also is you sell at 50% of what it's actually worth. So like you just do not get the better price. You cannot just manipulate the economy and suddenly walk away a billionaire, right? So it doesn't work that way. My next question is, what's one way that you would make these rules better? But we've kind of rambled about that. Do you guys have anything really quick off the top of your head about it?
No, I can't think of anything. Next, Adam.
Peps, you got something?
Peps.
Yeah, I don't. I think it very much depends on your game. I mean, take these rules as a base, look at your game, look at your timeline, look at what's realistic for your game. If you are going to be in big cities or little towns, you know, and work it into like you adjust as necessary for your game because they're going to be very specific based on your world. So I don't think there's a like this is what you should do. It should very much be game based.
One of the things that I want to point out is it's fresh in my mind because we just released the backgrounds episode. Is that we talked about the features that are part of the backgrounds, and because everybody gets a paragraph of here's a special thing you can do depending on if you are a sailor or a soldier or a acolyte or whatever, right? Most of them break down to just being I know a guy. Nobles can go talk to other nobles. Criminals, like their thing is called criminal contact, where they can just reach out to a contact and then get information or get a meeting with other criminals or fence an item. Like they just know how to get a message to someone and that person will show up. And that's like it takes a little while depending on the distance, but that should be worked into this buying and selling. If they're gonna have all of these rules about how long it takes and how much money it costs and all that, it's all built into the fucking background. It should cost you $100 or 100 gold pieces to put on a fancy like luncheon for the noble to come in and talk to them, but you can get it done in 2 days, right? Or the criminal contact requires a favor and they'll show up in roll a d10 that many days or something, right? So it should have been worked into the backgrounds. That would have made those features more impressive and more important.
Yeah, I like that.
Is there a kind of unique detail you'd add to a magic shop?
Well, once you get into like specialty, I would say is absolutely like the hidden way in or the puzzle to get in. Like if you can't solve this puzzle, like you don't deserve to be in the shop type thing. Yeah, some sort of extra challenge if you're going to the next level than just your like general store magic shop. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah,
done this, Adam.
I like the idea of it like looking like a different kind of store, and then like you have to know like how to get to the magic item. Like they take you into the back room, you know, like that kind of trope that you see in movies with like gun salesmen and stuff like that. Like you have to say the word or like do the thing or hand them a thing or so like going into it, it would just look like a regular shop or maybe not even like an item shop. It could be a barber shop, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's, I think, especially if you're higher levels, like your magic people might have that feeling that there's magic behind that door, you know? And then you're like, fighters gonna be like, what are you talking about? I just need a haircut. But yeah, it shouldn't just be magic things just laying around, you know? There should be a
Yeah, I really don't like the idea of shelves just lined with magical items. And anytime that I do that, the magic shop tends to blow up just because magic is too close to other magic and it's not being handled properly, right? If you have enough evocation spells, like if there are enough evocation wands all jammed into the same little bucket, something's gonna blow up. Like that's just how it's gonna be. You guys did that when you went to the apothecary and all of the potions were mixing on the ground because they've been broken, and then suddenly it just ignited. And you were on death saves, I think, Casey.
Yep, I got blown up hard.
So yeah, my big thing about a magic shop is it should be sparse. Like I almost want it to be the magic items on short pedestals under a glass dome, right? And you can wander around and look almost like it's a museum, and then offer, well, how much for this one over here? And it's a conversation. No price tags are posted, right?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of unique detail that you would add to a merchant of magical items?
Like you mentioned, Adam, they're going to have some sort of quirk, and they aren't going to be just a mundane NPC. Like I feel like build it so that it's someone memorable and somebody that becomes a potential ally or somebody that you will return to again later in the campaign. The first thing that came to mind for me was, well, like if anybody watches Critical Role, which a lot of people will, like in their campaigns, they created this furbolg named Pumat Sol, and he was like famous. Like he became one of the most loved NPCs in the campaign and went into other campaigns. And so they visited him many, many times, and he sold or created magical items for them. And so you can build that like celebrity status for somebody that can do this kinds of things. So you could take it to that level where it's then on the map, and you might be the ones directing other people to them. Be like, I know a guy. It's this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like what you said about like it being somebody you can go back to. And I think if I had it that way, every time they go back, they're a little more dark. They're a little more twisted. They're a little more greedy. Like they're upping their prices because being around that many magic items, potentially cursed items, all day every day is going to affect you. Like it's just going to, like, we know that magic affects more than just that item. It affects, you know, what's around it as well, the more powerful it is. So I would have that, like, that shop owner could potentially end up being your BBEG because of all of the magic they're absorbing and the more twisted that they're getting. If you wanted to run just like, you know, a shorter campaign or have like a surprise and like you think you're going after this guy, but this is really the problem over here and you've been ignoring it the whole time because he's giving you shit.
One of the most recent books, which is Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk, gets into the corruption of townsfolk by nearby magic. So there's all sorts of cool hints and tricks. Like that'd be a good reference point for people if they wanted to lean into that pretty hard. You get variant stat blocks for well-known creatures as well that have been corrupted by weird aberrant magic. So
yeah.
I mean, obviously my knowledge is dragons and what that affects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that actually brings me to what I was going to say. My big thing for unique vendor would be don't make it a humanoid, but make them have an illusion. There needs to be a glamour up so they appear to be a humanoid, but they don't understand humanoid cultures. So they're going to get the details wrong, right? Like, oh, people that like each other kiss. Every time that we have a good transaction, I will then kiss my customer on the mouth. That's weird. That's a weird thing. But that is absolutely 100% what a dryad posing as a human trying to sell magic items might do. Right. So when you get into some of the dragons or the beholders or something that don't want to be off-putting. So I'm a human. Look at me. My name is Norm Al Man. So and he runs around, but the problem is he just keeps like blinking his eyes separately. And he blinks them too much because humans blink. Look at how much I'm blinking. And just like really weird things. And then you'll discover the third or fourth time you meet them that they're actually whatever crazy bullshit you came up with, right? So I like the idea of if it shouldn't be an NPC, it should be a monster. Make it like, look, manticores speak. They can speak common. Have it be a merchant, right?
Yeah.
So no reason why not. If a beholder can run a thieves guild, then we can have a manticore be a merchant. So
That gave me flashbacks to the one guy in Buffy, I think like season 5, that Dawn tricked Dawn, and he looked like a human, but he like his eyes blink like Snake.
Yeah.
You know the guy.
I know the guy.
I just had like a vivid flashback to that guy, and like I think he had a tail.
Well,
like...
I keep thinking of Men in Black when they go to the arms dealer and he blinks his and then they shoot his head off and he's like, "Do you have any idea how much that stings?" Like that weird slimy. He's not quite right, and you could tell if you look hard enough, right? Anyway, this episode is about crafting, and we've gotten like an hour into it. So, Casey, let's actually talk about crafting now.
All right. So crafting is one of the options for players to do when they find themselves in downtime, and there is details in the player's handbook on how to do this. So you can craft non-magical objects, and options are quite wide, including like adventuring gear. You can create art, What is more important is it depends on the tools that you have at your disposal and that you are proficient in that. So you want to just make it make sense. So in your character build, you will have selected or been given proficiencies with different types of tools, and you may also acquire them as you level up. So you must be proficient with the tools related to what you are trying to craft, and you must have all the components for whatever you're making. Make it make sense. So the DM will help you on whether it makes sense or not, or what you can and can't do. But here is how the mechanics work. For every day of downtime you spend crafting, you can craft one or more items with the total market value not exceeding 5 gold pieces. Remember, this is non-magical objects. And the cost of the raw materials equals half of the market value. So if the item will be worth more than 5 gold pieces, each day will add 5 gold pieces. For example, if you want to craft, say, a special non-magical short sword that will be worth 500 gold pieces, you must spend 100 downtime days crafting before it is complete, and the raw materials are going to cost you 250 gold.
That's insane. That is an
Yeah.
insane amount of time.
Yeah, that's how the maths works out. But yes, it's an insane amount of time and quite a bit of gold, but you can also combine efforts. So say your party can work together to create that special weapon to defeat the enemy, if that's what it's for. As long as each character combining efforts has the appropriate proficiency tools and are in the same location so that they actually can work on it together, they can speed up the process. So you just add 5 gold pieces per person per day. So if 3 people spend their time, it's 15 gold pieces per day accumulated. So it cuts down the cost and it cuts down the time. If your campaign follows lifestyle costs per day, a modest downtime day will now cost you the usual 1 gold piece per day, and which is half the normal cost for what's determined on as a modest lifestyle. This is also just sidebar. I have never had this come up from a DM. So this is getting like very into mechanics and math as a DM to try and do like track the lifestyle costs per day. Again, it's like players don't track this, and if a DM wants to be nitpicky, sure. So I've actually never seen this used in real life, but it's there if you want to.
I have straight up avoided it with our party because I just know that about 50% of our players will have their eyes glaze over, and the other 50% will become so concerned about how much gold they have so that they can sleep in the appropriate comfy mattress. And I'm like, we don't need to add this stress to our campaign.
Totally. So Xanathar's Guide to Everything makes some small adjustments in this process in that it uses the calculation of 50 gold pieces for a work week of crafting. So that's that 8 days. It's a 10-day work week. So for the same example of the short sword worth 500 gold pieces, you divide the 500 by 50 and you get 10. So you will need to spend 10 weeks to get that sword done. It also allows you to craft more than one item in a week, but it limits the combined value of all items to be not more than 50 gold pieces. If they are, the time scales up. And if, again, it's a team effort, same as before, the time will then scale down. With the same example, if 3 people work on it, you'll achieve 150 gold pieces worth of crafting per week. So it's maths, it's just more people that help, it goes faster and you get it done quicker, but it still costs a lot and will take a lot of time. So up until now, we've been talking about non-magical things. Xanathar's does outline how to craft magic items as well. Not surprisingly, it's more involved. So it may take a very long time to gather the correct items for it. And so let's dive into exactly what you need to do. Firstly, a player character needs a formula for the magic item. Essentially like a recipe that will list the raw materials and the steps to craft the magical item. There will definitely be a unique or exotic item to find that's in that recipe. And if your DM is kind to you, it may actually exist in the world you're playing in, but it may not. This may be a long game venture to find the items that you need. So the book outlines how difficult the magic ingredients will be to find, how long it will take, and how much it will cost, and whether there will be complications during the process. It's all in the book. So as an example, if the unique ingredient is considered rare, it is classified as a CR 9 to 12. What does this mean? It means you will likely need to face a monster of CR 9 to 12 in order to acquire the item. This does not mean you need to fight it and kill it. You may need to find it and negotiate with it, do something for it in return for the item, or maybe it is just guarding the item and there's a way to steal the item without actually fighting the monster. Or perhaps you need that monster's help in order to craft the item. So there is a lot more to just, we're going to go up to do this big battle in order to get this item. So there's freedom here for the DM to play it as you would like. And if we look at the time, the number of work weeks scales up as compared to crafting the non-magical item. For example, the rare magic item will take 10 work weeks to complete. And if we look at cost, the rare item will cost 2,000 gold pieces for the material and tools needed to craft it. As first discussed with crafting non-magical items, do not forget that the player character needs whatever tool proficiency makes sense for crafting that magical item. But as an alternate, they can also be proficient in Arcana in order to craft the magical item. And if all goes well, you will be successful creating the magic item and it will work as expected. But when do things just go well? So Xanathar's has also included potential for complications. And as you can imagine, the possibility of complications increases if the item requires more and more rare ingredients, and if the magical item itself is more rare. So this is where it can get fun and there's more math. There is a 10% chance of complications for every 5 work weeks spent crafting the item. Remember, a rare item will take 10 work weeks. There is a crafting complications table where you can roll a d6 for 6 possible complications. As an example, your tools are stolen, forcing you to find new ones or find out who did it and then try and get them back. So it's a sidebar that might delay your timeline. So we also find information on crafting this in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It adds more guidelines, potentially making it more confusing, but I hope I can explain it clearly right now for you. So if you are crafting an item that will use a spell, like a wand of magic missile, for example, it requires the same lengthy process to find the formula and then the items required to construct it. And it also requires the crafter to be a spellcaster with spell slots and must be able to cast the spell that you're actually putting in it. So it makes sense. You make it make sense. You can't craft a wand of magic missile if no one in your party has the spell slots or the spell magic missile. It just needs to make sense.
Now, hold on a sec. Would you allow a sidekick to do it? Because some sidekicks will show up as a healer, right? So then if you've got an artificer, but you've got a healing divine magic spellcaster, sidekick, would you allow that?
I would, yes.
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as they do have the proficiencies and they have the skills. Yep.
Yep. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
They'll probably just, depending on if they want money for it, that'll just add to the cost. Or they want a favor later or something like that. All right. So depending on the rarity of the magic item, the player character also needs to meet the minimum class level. So that's where potentially a NPC or a sidekick could come in handy. If no one in the party has that, they might. Or as a DM, you can put that into the world for them as an option. The cost goes up even further once you add spells into the mix. So a rare item that has a spell component will cost 5,000 gold pieces for the formula, materials, equipment, and tools to make it. The time it takes is now calculated as 25 gold pieces per downtime day. Xanathar's is the one that does work weeks, Player's Handbook, and the DMG does days. So if a 500 gold piece item, for a 500 gold piece item, it's going to take 20 days to craft. But if you have helpers, that time will go faster. Additionally, if the magic item actually produces a spell, the crafter must expend one spell slot that matches that spell's level every single day during the crafting process. And the material components need to be available as well. So if it takes 20 days to craft a wand of magic missile, we'll say, you need to have a spell slot for magic missile for every day that you're going to be crafting it and use that spell slot.
I don't hate this because this is going to keep your guys from creating items that can cast disintegrate, right? Because it's just too hefty a price. Although it makes me wonder, do you have to do these days consecutively?
It does not say consecutively. No. So you can just plug away at it. Like if it takes 20 days, you will just accumulate the 20 days over time. If you have the proficiency, skills, and equipment, supplies, all of that just along with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're creating a wand with magic missile, and you're only going to be putting in, say, one charge, then you only need to have the material components for casting it once. And when you're creating that wand, they are consumed. And essentially, when you cast using the wand, you don't need the magical material components. So if you say want to put 6 charges in, then you're going to need 6 times the material components when you're crafting the wand. Make sense?
Yeah.
If the item that you're crafting does not have charges, it just does the spell, then you must have the spell components available every single day during the crafting time. So every day that you're crafting this, it will consume the material components. So if it's 20 days, you will need 20 times this material components. I get it. But it's like it gets a bit nitty-gritty, but you can follow it if you want, if this is something a player really wants to do or needs to do.
The good news is for a lot of the low level shit, it's going to be like 2 raven's feathers or a pinch of bat guano. Like you're not really hurting until you get into the diamond's worth this much. Then you're fucked, right?
Yeah.
So
totally.
So it really depends on. I don't deal with material components for the most part. I'm like diamonds I pay attention to, but everything else I'm like, I assume you have it, you picked it up, you bought it. If you chose this spell, you figured it out, and then we just kind of hand wave that in our campaign. Yeah. But if we're going to get into the crafting of it, I've got to pay attention to what my players have. If they need a small clay pot with these kind of runes on it, where the fuck did you get 20 of those? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I can't see you going to the efforts for this unless it is kind of a major thing. Like you need this for a reason. It's not just, I'm just going to do some magic spell crafting in my downtime at level 2 because why not? It's like, no. It is going to be something more substantial, and it's going to you need to pay attention to that. So finally, I want to touch on just the artificer class. We've brought up artificer a couple times. So there's details on that in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it does do some crafting. The first level class feature is magical tinkering, where you can add some magical traits to otherwise mundane objects. You must have thieves' tools or artisan tools in hand to do so. There's a lot of kind of rules and boundaries around the tools that you have when you're doing the artificer class. At second level, things get really fun because you gain the ability to infuse items. So you can pick infusions from the descriptor in the book, and you can add layers of things to different items that you acquire. So like magical tinkering, those infusions will last indefinitely until you die, where it will then vanish after a number of days equal to your intelligence modifier, or you swap the infusions during leveling and you can infuse by touching the object after a long rest. So it kind of makes it really complicated, but then it's like, as long as you have the tools and you have the thing, you basically, I'm going to infuse this with this magical infusion, and the next day, boom, it's done. So much less complicated, which makes sense, but it's worth mentioning because you can do a bit more crafting and that kind of tinkering with the artificer. And that's it.
If anybody wants more info on like the nitty-gritties of the artificers, I'm gonna say I'm racking my brain at this point. I'm gonna say we covered the 3 in Eberron, the 3 subclasses and the artificer itself in episode 56, and then we covered what's the last one? The armorer, or the Iron Man version that showed up in Tashes. We covered, as well as a lot of other details around artificers in episode 167.
Come on,
Sorry,
Adam.
my Rain Man is showing on this, but anyway, you can check out those episodes. They're in the playlist on YouTube, or you can go scrolling through whatever podcast app you're using. So anyway, let's roll initiative. I have questions.
1.
10.
18.
God, you're on fire, Casey. We're playing D&D later. You're wasting all your good rolls now.
I am not bringing any of this dice because they're spent.
I want you to know that I keep the 1 set of dice on my desk specifically for this and never for D&D. So
Yeah, this dice I've been using just for this, and it's not been rolling great, but we all know that not going first is best here.
yes.
So I keep using it here. I don't think I'll ever use it in a game.
Oh, strategic failure. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The more episodes I do, the more I am better at being first, but I still hate it.
Yeah. I think middle is best.
So Casey, you're first. How do you feel about the crafting rules for mundane items in 5th edition?
Okay,
Right?
well,
That's it. Enough said.
Like, I feel for mundane, just make it make some sense. Like, don't be trying to craft, like, I don't know, don't be trying to create some magnificent art piece when you are the barbarian who just, like, I don't know, is a Goliath barbarian who has never had any sort of background in that. There's no story connection to why you would do that. Then you know what? You're not going to do that. Or you're going to create something and it's just going to cost you gold pieces and it's not going to be sellable. Like, just make it make sense. But when it comes down to the time and all of that for a mundane object, I feel like it's like hand wave it. It's like, sure, you spend roll a dice if you want. It's like you spend 3 nights at the campsite whittling this box out of wood because your background, you have wood carver's tools or your proficiency is there.
Mhm.
Good enough.
Look, if I can be perfectly honest, Dan tinkered, right? He was a gnome, he wanted to tinker, so this was exactly what it was for. And he did not spend any time working on mundane items. If you're going to want to lean into crafting, you're going to be crafting magic items.
Yeah.
The mundane items is such a weird niche thing. I don't hate the rules. They're a little prohibitive, but they're like, that's okay. That D&D is not a crafting game. It could be, but it clearly isn't. So it makes enough sense. This is okay. Let me just say, this is a perfect lesson for dungeon masters. What makes good lore does not necessarily make good gameplay. The mechanics support the lore. It should take this long and this much materials to be able to do this thing. Great. Does not make fun gameplay.
No.
So this is an interesting lesson that I have extrapolated from other parts of gaming systems where I have learned. I mean, Casey, you saw the time that I tried to break down a trade economy for you guys and you all fucking, your eyes glazed over. I'm like, well, never mind then. Moving on. Right? Could be interesting lore. If I was going to write my own Game of Thrones and I wanted to get into that level of detail for my world building, sure, I can, but that doesn't make for good and interesting gameplay. And that discourages a lot of dungeon masters and the odd player as well that sits down at a table and goes, oh shit, I didn't think it would be like this. This isn't fun. So crafting mundane items, if you need an extra bucket, you will find one in the woods. Like,
Yeah.
I will just put it there. Like, let's not
Right.
waste our fucking time on this.
Or like, you've used up all your torches. Okay, so the ranger is going to spend their downtime around the campsite whittling more torches. Like, it's just like, no, you're out of torches. At the next stop, you pick up more torches. It's fine.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not gonna go any deeper on this for mundane items. I will go deeper for the glowing magic amulet of fireball. Yes, I will go deeper for that. But for fucking railroad spikes, we're not doing this. Right? Peps, how do you feel about it?
What? Okay, so you brought up Dan and his gnome and everybody knows I am an equal lover of gnomes. Also big ADHD energy, and I am the person that will watch a YouTube video and be like, yeah, I can do that, and then do it, And these things that I craft personally are obviously not magical items, but they are useful things or, that kind of thing. So as an example, I had a gnome that had a chair. It wasn't magical. It was a little like she pulled it out. It looked like a book. She opened it up. It was a gnome-sized stool because every pub or tavern she went into only had human-sized stools. So she made her own, right? I like the idea, especially gnomes with their tinkering background, giving them that ability to be able, here is a problem I see in this world, here is a thing I can create. I don't like it's going to take you like weeks and
Yeah.
weeks and weeks to make this. Because the person with that ability to be able to tinker and craft things can do it faster. They already have that knowledge.
They have the ability and they need the tools to do it. So
Yeah.
I
Like if you
myself
have tinkering tools
Yeah.
already.
I put it this way. I could not make an axe from scratch right now. I don't have the
Mhm.
tools in my apartment to do that.
Yeah.
I go down to my parents' garage. There are enough tools there that I could build and I could make a new axe handle. I could fashion and sharpen a new axe head onto that handle. And I
Mhm.
know how to do that myself. But if I don't have the tools, I can't fucking do it. It's going to take me forever to figure out a decent enough way to do that. So the crafting rules make sense. But you give me the tools and an afternoon and I can make an axe.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, assuming I have the metal axe head, but that's part of the tools, right? You have this chunk of metal that you're going to sharpen. It's just unnecessary. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah. Like I do like, Casey's make it make sense. But like, yes, if you have a gnome in the party and they want to tinker things and, let them. Don't make because it's not fun when they come to you with an idea that they're excited about. They're like, I want to make this thing. Like, okay, it's going to take 50 work weeks.
Yeah. It's like, I am going to abandon that after
Yes.
3 weeks. Like,
You
no.
will have it ready by the time you're level 20. Like, I just want to build a stool, man. Let me build a stool.
How do you guys feel about the crafting rules for magic items then?
Okay, so this is where, like, I'm starting to understand. I still think it's just excessive.
It's convoluted. It's too much. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is why I think they did build the mechanic for the mundane, non-magical, because they had to start somewhere. So, okay, what do we want the baseline to be? It was too much. They went too far. But then from that, you have the magical items. So that scales up. And so it's going to be more expensive, take more time, blah, blah, blah. So it's still too much time, and the gold cost makes a little more sense to me, but the time around it's still pretty challenging. It's going to become a side quest scenario based on like how it's written. So yeah, I don't know. I would still modify it a lot depending on what the magical item is going to be. And if you're just truly not sure, yes, there is guides and there's tables to determine exactly what that is. But if you hate it, like if it's going to take, 100 days and you have 12 days till the world explodes because of whatever. It's like you adjust it. Just adjust it.
Yeah. Yeah, look, if I can be honest, again, this is a case of the lore makes sense, but it's not fun to play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come up with a million different ways as a dungeon master to speed this shit up, right? You're going to find someone who's done this before, or artificer's notebook or something. We're going to cut corners. You're going to make some rolls, but we're going to add your this and the proficiency modifier and so on. And if you can roll above this, then it'll cut, 3 days off of it. Like, we'll figure it out if we desperately want to go this route. But my problem with magic items is that if you have the time to do it, then you start when you're low level, so you don't have the spell slots or anything to do anything cool. By the time you get the spell slots, you're in the end game. You don't have 100 days to cast over and over and over again on a fucking meteor swarm.
Yeah.
Who's got the time for that shit, right? So no, these rules feel like they belong in a different system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the time that really gets me on these things. Because like I said before, time is limited in your games. Like real world, it takes a year or two to get through a campaign. In game, it's a month. Like you just don't have that much time in game to do these things. And I think that could be very discouraging for your players if they come to you with this idea. And things like that could make players not want to come back or not want to, do the next campaign,
Not want to play this character anymore, right?
Yeah, like
I've built my dwarven artificer around this and it's not fun. I'm not doing the thing I want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just very much work with your players. I mean, definitely crafting a magic item should take some time. It should take some effort. Definitely have them rolling multiple checks along the way. Having to have the spell and all of that definitely makes sense. You can't just create something that you have no knowledge of or ability to do. But time and money wise, I would really just work with your player, make it story, cohesive to them. If they have that ability, if they have it in their background, in their backstory, and it's written in that they can craft things or, have proficiency with a tool, then obviously they've used it before. So they have that ability, they have the knowledge. They're not a novice, so they should be able to do it quicker than what it says.
Yeah.
Do you think being an artificer is going to make it easier? Do you think it's necessary for crafting? Like, do you like how it fits into this system?
Well, playing an artificer currently, I haven't leaned into the magical crafting as much as I would like to. I actually feel like as it's written, sure, it gives you some abilities to do things, but it lists specifically what you can and can't do. Like there is not the freedom of just crafting a magic item. You can't. So I don't feel like it makes it easier. I think it's equally as difficult for an artificer. The only thing they might have is they can then just be proficient in whatever tool for crafting that magic item. That will not be an issue to find. But otherwise, there's not really any more advantage. I would maybe allow them to do it quicker because for the sake of them being an artificer, but that's about it.
Yeah, thematically, it fits really, really well. And mechanically, it's a wet fart, right? And so I would absolutely, it's like I did with Dan, right? He was a gnome tinker. He wanted to build a prosthetic. Those two things don't go together. But because he wanted to do that, I absolutely hand waved it and said, absolutely, yes, you can spend the time and resources on this. We can do it. We were high level at that point. He'd been tinkering away in all of his downtime when he wasn't doing drugs or sleeping with dwarven women in that campaign, which was like wild character. But I
wasn't sure if we were talking about
one.
Dan or his character in that moment.
That's on brand for Dan. So yeah, artificer is not necessary. I want to say I do like that you have to be a spellcaster. That makes a lot of sense for me. I don't like the idea of a barbarian or a monk or a fighter or a rogue that doesn't have magic going. I'm going to make magic items. Like,
Yeah.
learn it first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I almost want to say that we should take this away from warlocks and sorcerers for thematic reasons, but we'll leave it alone. I don't want to limit it. It's already too limiting for players. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've played an artificer once or twice, I can't remember. The one that I definitely know, because I've made my way through all of the classes. Uh it was for a Christmas game, so she was one of Santa's elves.
nice.
But
Oh
she
my
wasn't
God.
particularly good at her job, and she made a lot of things explode in the North Pole and got kicked out.
Did you just want to be a dentist?
No, but in that game we had a goblin that was also one of Santa's elves, and he ended up becoming the Tooth Fairy because he wanted to steal everybody's teeth.
That's dark and weird, and I love it.
Yeah, that's my level of games. Um, that's actually on YouTube, and you can watch it happen.
Plug it where? Where on YouTube?
It's on the initiative order. It's one of our it was a Christmas fundraising game. We raised money for, I believe that one was the Red Cross.
Cool.
But I did find while I was playing her that it was a little confusing on what you can and cannot do as an artificer. And like there was a lot of things that I think thematically I had to make fit into the abilities. Like one of the things, you could make something with a sound that you have heard before, like a recording. So you had like I had to, well, I've worked in Santa's workshop, so I know what Santa sounds like, so I'm gonna make it sound like his voice. Like, does that fit? Like, can I do that? Like, I didn't know. Like, is that a thing I could do? Because it feels like a thing I should be able to do, but I'm not sure. So yeah, I feel like it could have been explained a little better on the things that you should be able to do.
Yeah, you could spin it as there's just did have your freedom, talk to your DM and like bend that to what you want. But rules as written and options as written is very limiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a specific way that you would make these rules any better? Or does it need a full overhaul?
Yeah, like just like, and because it's touched on like in a level of detail in 3 different books, then there's plus like Tasha's for the artificer. It's like they were trying to make the adjustments or clarify, but they made it more difficult. And so it's like, no, just what are you doing?
They heard people complain about it and we're like, we'll fix it. Like, you still didn't fix it. We'll fix it again.
Yeah, it's like they doubled down. It's like, no, we're insisting it's going to take not days now, work weeks. We're going to go with work weeks in Xanathar's. It's like,
I've got to say, I don't think there's any way to rescue this. I think you got to build it from the ground up. I think you've got to look at the whole system about the resources that you have and how you want to go about. They don't want players to have magic items. Clearly they don't. And it's baked in. Like they're right up front. Low magic. You should have a single magic item for every tier of gameplay. Considering most campaigns end around level 11 to 14, that's tier 3. That means that you will play for a year and a half and get 3 magic items. Of course, they want this to take hundreds of days and hundreds of gold pieces. And like they don't want you to have this for the balance reasons. But we all fucking know better. We know better. That's not how D&D is played. So if we're going to give out magic items, then we have to make it more accessible. And so honestly, the only way that I can think of, if I want to use these rules at all, it'll be using percentages of the time based on, it would be 100 days, but your proficiency is +2. So that's already 20% off of that, right? And as you get higher and higher, we're going to remove another 10% for every proficiency. And then you get plus another 1. So another 10 days off because you got the tool set. Right. And you got a helper. It's another 10 days off. We'll figure this shit out. Trust me, we'll get there. For the average schmo NPC, 100 days. You guys are heroes. You're the chosen ones. We're going to do this. You do it in like 25 minutes. Let's go. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. that is sort of a point. Like, the more you work on something, the better you generally get at it. Like, you figure out early on the mistakes you're making and better yourself. So if you're working on a thing for 100 days, like, you're going to get faster at it in that time. Like, it should, the more, especially if you're working on it consistently, day after day after day, like, you're going to get better and better at it. So
Yeah,
that should shave time off right there. Like,
should.
yeah. If you pick it up one day and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to work on this, and then you don't touch it for a month and then you come back, like, yeah, then maybe it could take that long because you're not really paying that much attention to it or working on it. Like, you forget what you were doing, you know? We've
Mhm.
all been there with projects that you set down for a month and come back to, and you're like, what did I just do? Where was
yes,
I?
very familiar with this concept. Yes.
It's even me with painting and like, what colors was I using in this?
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know a specific thing that will make it better other than, again, just working with your players and adjusting it for your own game.
Yeah. All right, Peps, you're going to talk about potions
Potions.
because we're
I-
not convoluted enough that magic items and potions and scrolls are all different fucking rules.
They're all different. But sort of not. I mean, they're very similar in a lot of ways also. So the potion that is given to us in the player handbook is arguably the most used potion in any game, and it talks about the potion of healing. Now I always forget how much it does heal you for, so here's a little refresher. You regain 2d4 plus 2 hit points. It also states that drinking or administering a potion does take an action. So that feels like it's in the potion of healing section, but I think that means across the board, all potions. So with that, let's talk about what happens if you decide to drink 2 potions of different kinds, or you decide to mix different potions in a bottle together. Essentially, you are mixing multiple chemicals with magical abilities together that could turn out good or very, very bad. To help you figure that out, there is a table you can roll on in the DMG. This can get you anything from they both work perfectly fine to you create a magical explosion and take 6d10 force damage and give 1d10 force damage to anything within 5 feet. You are to roll on the table for each new potion you decide to mix. So if you drink 3 different potions, you're rolling on that twice, sort of thing. Or if, you have a floor with potions mixing on it because you knock them all over, then you're rolling like 10 times.
Fun.
Yeah. Xanathars gives us a few guidelines when it comes to brewing a potion of healing. It is stated that it is a special category for crafting and separate from other magical items. A standard potion of healing takes 1 day and costs 25 gold pieces. A greater healing potion takes 1 work week and costs 100 gold pieces. A superior healing potion takes 3 work weeks and 1,000 gold pieces. And finally, a supreme healing potion takes 4 work weeks and 10,000 gold pieces. It doesn't really get into the like nitty-gritty of you have to be doing a thing every single day like it did with the magic items or anything like that. I sort of think of it as it takes that long for the potion and the items in it to like mix together and become that potent.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like brewing beer or making
Right.
wine. You do all of the work at the beginning and then it just has to sit for that amount of time before it's like it has its magical potency.
Yeah, that's sort of what was in my head as well. There appear to be around 20-ish different potions in the DMG that I saw. So I'm just going to share a couple examples with you. You could take the potion of gaseous form and gain the effects of the gaseous form spell for 1 hour with no concentration. The potion's container seems to hold fog that moves and pours like water. Or maybe you drink a potion that looks like a thick syrupy liquid, similar to liquefied iron. That would be the potion of invulnerability and give you resistance to all damage types for 1 minute. So with your other potions, I think it's important to make them unique in what they look like, feel like, smell like. if you are going to go that route. Tasha's gives us some options. If you want to play a character using potions, you would want to look into the Alchemist. In this subclass, you get abilities that are a mixture of spellcasting and potion using, but we're just going to talk about the potions. Basically, as you finish a long rest, you can touch an empty flask and create an experimental elixir. There is a D6 table as to what kind of elixir you created. This could be healing, swiftness, resilience, boldness, flight, or transformation. You can also choose to expel a spell slot to create one of these elixirs. These elixirs only last until someone drinks them or until the end of your next long rest. So they don't last forever. You can't just keep collecting them every day. But at higher levels, you can create more of them each day. That's what I have potions.
I really like that. Maybe I'll be
Yeah.
an alchemist.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Alchemist is the weakest subclass of the artificers.
Yeah.
It's really neat, but you have to remember that you are going to get nothing in combat, right? It's compared to the others, it's really cool for background potion brewing stuff. But you'd better be prepared to just wield a crossbow, right? So, how do you feel about the rules for potions in 5th edition? Let's roll dice.
Ooh, 2.
I got a
13.
4. Well, guess who's going first, Peps, after you talk shit. So,
All right, how do I feel about the rules? After hearing all of the other rules, I'm oddly gonna say there's not enough. Like, it gives you all these potions and stuff, but like, what goes into them? That was always my thing. Like, I had an herbalism kit and I wanted to make potions, but nowhere does it say what do I need to put into these potions.
I think that a lot of the potions mimic spells, and so I would go looking for the material components there if I was going to try to figure that out.
Yeah. A lot of them do. A lot of them are just you get to use this spell with no concentration or with no spell components.
Yeah.
I did, like I mentioned earlier, had the character that was portal jumping and like had to find different ingredients in each world to make different potions. So she would have to like go to a library to find a like recipe book on how to make potions and then find those items in that world, which made it a lot more interesting. And then she just accidentally stole all the library books.
Accidentally. Uh-huh.
She forgot to return them because they jumped into another portal.
Honestly, when it comes to potions, I like potions. I like handing them out. I like them because they're one-time use. They're consumable, and it's usually a get out of jail free card when I hand one. I don't know what the deal is, but here, have a potion of enlarge. It's not enlarge or reduce. It's just enlarge. I don't know when this is going to come in handy, but fucking go nuts. And then I tend to give them to the players that I want to see more creativity out of, or I just drop them in the middle of the party and say, who wants it, right? So I have a lot of fun with potions. I'm going to say this. I absolutely fucking hate potions of healing. 2d4 plus 2 is a bullshit, and I don't agree with it. So
yeah.
What would you have instead?
The way that we do it, or your average potion of healing is 1 hit die plus your constitution modifier. It doesn't make any sense for the barbarian who is all about being the big, strong constitution beast that he is, get the same amount of healing that the frail little wizard in the corner has. Especially because the person that's going to need the potion is the barbarian. So them rolling a d12 plus 5 versus the d6 plus 2 makes more sense to keep the party balanced. I think potions of healing are part of the problem with the disparity between the power levels of martial and spellcasting characters. So, but that's just me. Casey, how do you feel about the rules for potions?
Well, coming from someone who, say, just while you're running a campaign, one of the players going, hey, I would like to maybe try and create this magic item, and you going, sure, let me just quickly look up, I actually don't know what that means, and then glazing over, looking at the fucking chaos that's there. And then somebody going, hey, I have a herbalism kit. Like, is it possible for me to like make some potions or something in my downtime? And doing that same process, you can actually get enough in, a 5-minute quick lookup to be like, yes, absolutely, blah. So comparatively, I think it's great. I think there is enough And it's not going to, you're not going to like have to panic, rack your brain to try and figure out a bunch of math on the fly if this just comes up, or you end up hand waving it and be like, we'll talk about that later. Sure, I just have to figure it out. With the potions, you could probably on the fly play it out in the game.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that. So I feel like it's good. It's usable, realistically usable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See, would you have it still where you have to know that? Like if it's a potion that acts like a spell, do you have to know that spell?
no, but you have to know the recipe.
Okay.
Right. It just feels
Yeah.
it feels a little different. Like a ranger should be able to make whatever spells because they're out there in the wilderness grabbing material components as long as they have the recipe for it,
Mhm.
right? A rogue scout should be able to throw together a couple of potions. That just makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
And I do like how you touched on like just having the material, like you need to have the material component of that the spell would have to make the potion. And it's that same instance like when if you're creating the wand of magic missile, like you need it to create it and it's consumed in making the potion, or you put the feather in or whatever it is. And then you don't need it when you actually use the potion, and you don't need it when you actually use the wand. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And it would just add a little bit more challenge to the person creating the potion, because it's like, oh, okay, well, you need to get these things and then sure, you can do it, versus, oh, I want to make this. Okay. And like an hour later it's made. And like, that's all.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about the alchemist? Do you think it's necessary if you want to be a potion crafter, or is it just an extra bonus?
I don't think it's necessary if you want to be a potion crafter because you can get an herbalism kit and make things. But it gives you sort of the extra of I can just touch a flask and make a potion when I wake up, and that like is pretty, that gives it that extra bonus to it. But I think a warlock could make potions. It would just take longer.
And I think they should. Like it
Yeah.
feels good that a warlock would make potions.
Yeah.
Wizards do, right? But I agree with you. Although I'm going to say this, if I'm going to be a potion crafty person, if that's the kind of character I want to play, I'm going to be an alchemist as well. I'm going to commit to the fact that I'm not going to be able to do a certain amount of shit, but I like in combat, but behind the scenes, the extra stuff, the buffing my other players or being an interesting role player, I could get into this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when we played Call of Cthulhu, Sean was there as a pharmacist, and his whole thing was, I am going to poison everyone. I am going to get myself all drugged up on methamphetamines to give myself advantage on shit and then be strung out and fuck later. And he played with the chemical side of it. There was no magic potion shit, but it was so much fun from a flavor standpoint. Chaotic as hell, but like there's definitely something to be said about the alchemist build. So
yeah, I completely agree with you both. I think it's not necessary, but yeah, my brain immediately went there, Adam, where it's like, oh, that could be a lot of fun, where like you just have a band on like across your chest with just like a million different flasks and tubes, and just during whatever's going on, you're just pulling them and like throwing them at people or drinking them, and like crazy shit's happening. That could be really fun. But yeah, you're limiting yourself in other ways, especially in combat. But it depends how flavorful you want to be in another aspect with your player. And I think it's something that, yes, lots of different players, like classes, could do easy enough. It just doesn't, they may not think of it. So this is why like it's like once you know about this, like once I hear about it, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Why aren't more players doing this? Because it's very feasible if you just need a herbalism kit, and things might go wrong, but they might go right. And when you said, Peps, it's like a warlock could do it. It might take longer. Yes, but not work weeks longer. It's like It might take 2 evenings. One evening you put it all together. The next evening you do the test where you dip your finger in it and see if it works.
Right. I mean, even the supreme healing potion takes 4 work weeks. Like that compared to the magic item. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
This is the design of 5th edition. They don't want you to have magic items, but they do want you to live forever.
Hmm.
So, what's one way that you'd make these rules better for potions?
So it gives you like guidelines on brewing the healing potion. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted guidelines on brewing the other potions as well. At least if it's a rare, if it's a common, if it's, like, I want to know how long each of those is going to take. And I guess you could look at like that, where the different healing potions would land on that and go by that. But yeah, I just like, as a person who has tried to make potions in a game, I have tried to look up these rules and I have no clue how long or what it takes to actually make a potion, other than a healing potion. So that's the only thing that I could ever make.
This is one of those things where I feel like the designers decided that no one's going to do this. We should put it in there for the 6 people that want to play it, but don't spend the word count on this, right?
Mhm.
We have other things to put in these pages. So
Yeah.
if we've got to add 4 more pages about potions, we've got to jack up the price by another $1, and we don't want to do that. So fuck it. Which drives me up the fucking wall. But in the age of PDFs and D&D Beyond, this drives me nuts. Right? Having a 20-page brew potions document would be amazing. But how would I make it better? So when it comes to poisons, there are different ways for you to actually apply poisons: through contact, through injury, like if it's you have a poisoned arrow, right? Through drinking, or through inhaling the poison. Let's do that for potions. Let's have different potions. And I mean, I'm rewriting the whole fucking script from this point, but like, let's have potions that it's not, you can drink it and it's absolutely fine, but if you inhale it, if you're trapped in a room with the fumes, if you can brew a little flask of whatever potion you want of reduce and large, and if you splash it on someone, they don't have to drink it, you just hit them with it, right? Like, there could be more fun to be had with potions. I feel like we just don't do enough in D&D with them.
Yeah. Or just tossing them, like just hitting
Grenades,
it. Yeah.
just liquid grenades.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you guys said. Because Peps, when you said there was 20-ish potions.
Yeah, I did
like,
a very quick count.
yeah, like you went through like the book and counted them up yourself. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it would be a page or half a page just for quick reference for DMs to just have a table with all of those. These are all of the potion options. And then even just like another column that says what the components are required. Like, they don't even have to come up with anything more, just like summarize it so you don't have to go sifting through so many books. That would be super helpful.
Yeah.
All right, now the last thing that we're going to talk about is scrolls.
Scrolls. So it is important to note that not all scrolls are spell scrolls. Some are powerful wards, but most of them you come across will follow these rules. A scroll is a rolled piece of paper that can be attached to wooden poles. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And is typically in a tube of ivory, jade, leather, metal, or wood to keep it safe. It is a consumable magic item, and once the contents of the scroll are released using an action to do so, it cannot be used again and will either go blank or crumble into dust. Now, at the end of the section on page 139, it says any creature that can understand a written language can read an arcane script and attempt to activate it. On page 200, however, it says the spell is if the spell is on your class list, then you can use an action to read it, but it is otherwise unintelligible. So it's a bit confusing there. And I don't know if the page 139, if that part was for the ones that are wards, but it didn't make it very clear. So and I think that's always been my problem with scrolls in this game, is just that not knowing if I could use them or not, or read them or not. And I still don't entirely know. It also states that if the spell is on your class's list, but at a higher level, you must make an ability check to see if you successfully cast it. If you fail this check, it disappears and nothing happens. There's
hold
a
on,
table.
hold on. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pause you for a sec because you were confused about it, and I have the answer.
Okay.
So, not all scrolls that are magic scrolls are spell scrolls.
Mhm.
So you can have a scroll of, I don't know, turning blue. That's not a spell, right? Like you read the scroll and you point your attention at whatever, you point a finger and it turns the item blue. That's not a specific spell. The only example in the Dungeon Master's Guide of a scroll that is not a spell is a scroll of protection. But you can make up whatever you want. If the scroll happens to outline a specific spell, then that rule on page 200 applies.
Okay.
Otherwise, you go by the stuff on page 139.
Okay.
That was a fucking nightmare for me to parse out when I was doing this, and I've had to go back to the notes here and reread it to be like, what the shit were they saying? And I had to open up D&D Beyond to look at it again and be like, do I have this right? Is it yes? Okay, fine. This is how it fucking works. It is such a nightmare coming up with the.
But again, like they're 60 pages apart in the
Right?
book.
Right?
Like, so if you just read the scrolls, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, anybody can try it because that's what it says on this page.
Mm-hmm.
If you never get to page 200 to read the specific spell scroll, which is what you're going to be using the most.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah, that could have been a little easier. All right, where was I?
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off, but I'm like, I can't let this research go to waste.
Yeah. Okay, so you can try to cast a higher level. You have to make a check. If you fail, it disappears. There is a table included that helps you determine the spell save DC and attack bonus of the scroll, and it is based off the level of the spell. So like what you get when you cast that. Now a wizard spell can be copied. Just like on their spell book, you must pass a save, and if successful, it is copied. Whether they succeed or not, the scroll is destroyed. So that's your basic scroll information. Now Xanathar's gives us some rules on scribing our own spell scrolls, which honestly I've never thought about doing until now. Like why aren't we just scribing more scrolls and selling them or giving them to NPCs?
Because it takes 90 years.
Yeah, I'll give you the answer in a second. In order to describe a spell, you must have proficiency in Arcana, provide the material components, have the spell prepared, or have it on your known spell list. On top of all of that, you are given a table of how much time and money it takes to scribe a scroll based on the spell level. This goes from cantrip, which takes 1 day and 15 gold pieces. It does also state that if you do a cantrip, it is, no matter the level of the person, it is a like level 1 cantrip. So you don't get the like bonuses past level 5 or whatever. All the way to 9th level, taking 48 work weeks and about 250,000 gold pieces.
Right.
So yeah, that may be why we aren't doing it more.
They might as well just say no one's ever going to do this. Like
Yeah.
we basically don't want people to do this, so we're gonna make it impossible with those
Right.
stats.
Oh, hold on. Also, a little detail that I just tweaked on and I looked it up. The only way around this is if you are a wizard that is an order of the scribes, and then you get to 10th level, and then whenever you finish a long rest, you can create 1 magic scroll by touching your wizardly quill, no comment, to a blank piece of paper or parchment and cause 1 spell from your awakened spellbook to be copied. So that's the go around, the shortcut on that. And it's a long rest.
Yeah.
But you have to
Versus
become the
48
Order of
work
Scribes
weeks.
wizard, which is who gives a fuck? No one is choosing this. Again, we covered this in an episode, and it's flavorful and interesting and fun, but there's so many more powerful wizards out there. So you can control gravity, you can control time, you can blow shit up from further away and for cheaper, or you can have an awakened spellbook that talks to you.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
It is also stated that there could be complications to scribing a scroll. They are usually limited to only affecting the person who is doing the scribing, as it's a solitary action. Every work week spent scribing is said to bring a 10% chance of complications, and we get a D6 table to use for this. An example being, due to a strange error in creating the scroll, it is instead a random spell of the same level.
Uh-oh. The question is, does the person know that?
I would say no. Like as a DM, you roll the percentage dice or whatever to see if they fail. You don't tell them. You then roll on the thing.
Yeah.
I love the idea of you trying to cast counterspell and accidentally casting fireball instead.
All right, and now that brings us to a variant rule in the DMG, scroll mishaps. A creature who tries and fails to cast a spell from a spell scroll must make an intelligence save or roll on a d6 table of mishaps. I've selected a couple of examples of these mishaps to share. The spell affects a random location within the spell's range, or the spell's effect is contrary to the normal one, but neither harmful nor beneficial. For example, if you cast Fireball, you might accidentally create an area of harmless cold.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, that's what I got for scrolls.
Let's grab dice. I want to ask a couple more questions before we wrap this up.
8.
1.
9.
I don't think, did I go first ever?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. Casey, how do you feel about the rules for scrolls?
Okay, well, I feel like I'm not even going to talk about the work week bullshit, but like, and even the gold pieces, but there's enough there to guide you along, like if you want to do this. But I feel like this is going to come up way less than potions even. And making potions is going to come up not that often unless suddenly you are in a specific scenario where you know having all of these different kinds of potions are going to be helpful or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate it. Yeah, I don't hate it.
Peps, I think you were next.
Yeah. I always, when I found scrolls, because you do find a lot of scrolls laying about dungeons and stuff, they just happen to be there for some reason. Always found it irritating that you had to like have that on your list to be able to cast it. I know like it then doesn't take up one of your spell slots, which is useful, but like as somebody like playing somebody who doesn't get magic, if you find a scroll and like I could actually cast this one spell this one time and that would be fun. I think like I would enjoy that more than like, oh, I'm a wizard and it's a wizard spell, so I can cast it. Like, good for you. You could already cast all the fucking spells.
Yeah.
I have homebrewed it so that anyone can pick up a scroll and read it, but the DC is 15 plus the spell scroll level.
Yeah, like it gives us the mishap table. Like, use that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the wild magic table. Either of them, from the barbarian or the sorcerer, right? Like, there's options here.
Yeah.
Or just get fucking weird, turn them into a jack-in-the-box for 1d4 hours if they fuck it up, right? Like, you can do anything you want. But no, they just said, womp womp.
Yeah, because you're going to use it as like a last-ditch effort. Like, this is going to be, I've run out of every other option. I have this scroll. We're like so close to beating it. I'm gonna go for it. It's your Hail Mary, you know?
Yeah.
I love scrolls and potions because of the fact that they're one use. Craft it, like, I don't like the fact that you can just write it into your wizard's book. I don't like that. So it makes it too easy because I want to hand out tons and tons and tons of scrolls, right? And so I don't like that. I love the idea of the rogue that just has like a notepad full of scrolls and he's just like, what am I gonna do? Flip, 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 flip. Okay, banishment, right? Like, and just try. In The Mummy, Benny pulling out all of the little amulets for the different gods to see which one works. Imagine a rogue with a book of scrolls doing through that, like going through all that. That's fun to me. We're limited based on the rules, and I'm not a fan of that. What's one way that you'd make the rules better?
Well, like, yeah, I like the scroll mishaps. Again, if you are following the guide for even creating a 6th level spell that takes 8 work weeks and 15,000 gold pieces, it's like if you spend all of that time and your DM makes you spend all of that time and money, and then you have a mishap and it doesn't work. Like, I feel like I feel like you could use the mishaps along the way.
Mhm.
And so like that's maybe why it would take longer, is you can test it at certain spots or whatever. And then if it then roll on the table, this mishap happens and you're salvaging what's left or you're starting over, and then that might make it take longer. They could probably clarify and add a lot more to that. And like you were saying, Adam, just give more options for how and when to use the different things. Because I do like the tables.
Yeah.
I just got the image of like you misspelled a word and had to go over it with whiteout.
Yeah.
Shit. Scrolls
Yeah,
don't come with autocorrect.
And then you finish it and you go to test it out, and then like it still takes the original word because it's what is etched on the paper
Written on there.
and so it's just like it equates that spelled word wrong into the closest word it could think of, and it's just chaos.
Oh, hold on. There's plot hook or DM kerfuckery. I'm trying to remember what the spell is. First of all, if you cast the same spell 100 times at the same place on the same object for 100 days in a row, so once per day for 100 days in a row, that spell becomes permanent. There is a spell, and I'm trying to remember which one it is. I'm not going to get this, where you apply it to a message, and then only the appropriate people can read the real message. Everyone else reads something else on it. So if you were to put this on a spell scroll so that you think you're casting one thing, but you're actually casting power word kill or something because you've got this glamour over it, that's a load of fun. I'm a big fan of that bullshit.
Well, and if you're not like a higher level spell caster and you're trying to you buy the formula and recipe to make this scroll, and that whoever bought it has put steps in to add the glamour at the end, and you just don't know because you don't know enough about it. So you create it perfectly, but it has that built into the recipe, and it's just like fucking disaster.
Oh my God. Or they just mislabel the scroll when they sell it to you.
Yeah.
All right, I do have a question about the scrolls.
Yeah.
What is the money for? Like I get with magical items, like you have to have the material to make the item. You have to have the components every day to put into it. You are literally just putting the components down and writing on a piece of paper. Why does that cost $250,000?
Okay, so here's my reasoning for this, and this is from previous editions and the way that I like to run it. If you're going to create real spell scrolls, then you need to have a magical quill, you need to have magical ink that gets consumed, and you need to have magical parchment paper. And then on top of that, you will use the spell components for every day that goes by. You burn through that. So you can't use the same spell components. If I need 2 acorns, those acorns are gone day 1. So if I've got to do this for 48 days in a row, I will need 96 acorns.
Yeah.
Right.
I did not see in there that you needed it every day, like the spell.
No, it's not in there. That's all my homebrew shit, right?
Yeah.
So and that's honestly where I would come at this. Like my way of making this better is to add magic ink, and you can get like +2, +3, +4 magical ink, which is going to let you reduce the cost and the time of getting this down because it's already infused with whatever. Or this is evocation ink, and that's illusion ink, depending on the spell you want. It's going to do different things. This is where we get interesting. This is where it becomes fun. And you're going to have your players go, oh shit, I found a scroll with purple ink. What spell school is that, right? And then depending on if they're proficient with it, like an illusionist might end up they don't even have to roll to cast the spell, no matter what level it is, if it's an illusion spell, right? Like these are the rules I would throw in to make it interesting, because I feel like 5th edition is so lowest common denominator, which is great for entry level and insanely basic for anybody that's played for longer than 2 or 3 years. These rules just get weird and convoluted. And when we start to see the big picture, it doesn't fit. So anyways, before I continue to rant and bitch, let's jump into our last info break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit at r/itsamimic, Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes, and comments. Engagement like that helps us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
Okay, before we wrap up, I did just look it up because I keep notes, because of course I do. I have counted myself 53 different potions that exist across the books.
Okay.
But I haven't included the last 3 or 4 books. I don't know if there's anything new in those. So that's an older count that I did a long time ago. So there are a lot of potions. It'd be really nice to have them all compiled together somewhere.
Yeah.
Did you do that, Adam, in your counting? Do you have an Excel spreadsheet yet?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what that was. Is I went to my Excel spreadsheet because there are times where I just want to say, hey, I'm going to hand out this thing. You guys rolled a random potion on our random encounter table, right? Sometimes on our random encounter tables, you can just come across items. Some of those items, if you roll well enough, can be magical. Sometimes they're potions. I need to go figure out which potion to hand out. So that's why.
I did not look at all the books. I just looked at one.
Nobody fucking will. Like it's insane that they don't have some sort of compendium for this stuff, right? So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well, interestingly, spellcasting foci.
Foci. It's the plural of focus, which is insane, and you'll only ever hear it in D&D.
I knew before I even finished the word that you would say something.
Oh, it's 2024. It's pronounced spellcasting Fauci.
Fauci? Oh, okay. Okay. Interestingly, spellcasting foci are not technically magical items. They are mundane items that the spellcaster uses to hone their magics. What that means is that if we follow the rules on page 187 of the player's handbook, then it takes 5 gold pieces and 1 day to craft a holy symbol, 10 gold pieces and 2 days to craft a druidic focus, and 5 to 20 gold pieces and 1 to 4 days to craft an arcane focus. If you're an arcane spellcaster, you'd better spend some money to quickly get a backup, because relying on your component pouch might be a pain in the ass if you have any kind of dungeon master that's a stickler for spell components and consumable items.
I want you to know, Casey, heads up, I am going to start hunting the spellcasting foci that our players have, because we're all getting away scot-free on the spellcasting component shit, and I'm going to start breaking those things.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, it's one thing on the character sheet that no dungeon master thinks to go after, right? And it's going to absolutely matter.
Yeah, and it's usually like when you create your character, it's some sort of really important thing to the character. So, you're also just causing more trauma. So thanks.
That's the goal, right? That's why, if you remember, Bargus, my life cleric, had his spellcasting focus etched into his teeth. So when he spoke, they glowed, and that's what cast the... So no one could fucking steal it, because it's happened to me so often in 3.5.
Unless they stole his teeth while he was sleeping.
Yeah, until we meet the goblin from your
the tooth fairy,
holiday one shot. So yeah.
Oh my god, you wake up in the morning and just
like,
all of your bottom teeth are gone. Oh.
All right, well, anyways, that's all for this part of our discussion on crafting. Please take a second to engage with a like, follow, comment, and review to help push our engagement. And don't forget to subscribe to find future inspirations for your campaigns.
If you'd like to support us, we have a store with some merch and a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com, as well as a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits. And don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
That was a long one, but there was a lot to discuss.
So much math.
Oh my god, it's the worst.
I think it's the first episode I've been on where we have so drastically disagreed with what is written as being what we should do.
Oh, you weren't listening to the early episodes. Dan and I just fucking shat on the first Druids
I
episode.
believe you.
Like it was, I almost wanted to re-record that a couple of times. I have gone off on a couple of mechanics, and I mean, Peps, you've listened to most of the episodes. I'm the one
Yeah.
that rants, right?
Well, we also went off on the lunar dragons pretty hard.
Holy shit, did we ever? Oh my god. The solar dragons
Oh,
first, and then we
yeah.
eviscerated the lunar dragons.
Yeah.
We
That
had,
was the only dragon episode that like we all hated the dragon. Like
man, we've gone off on Spelljammer, we've gone off on Druids, we've gone off on, I'm trying to think, like there have been some real like piece of shit
Mhm.
parts of fifth edition that we have just hated on. The Purple Dragon Knight got a lot of hatred as well because it's utterly useless as a fighter subclass. Like, it's always
Yeah.
fun to get onto one of the episodes where you just get angry at it and rant. So
I feel like especially after the week that all three of us have had for like with you guys in the snow and me and just the plague that is in my house, like
oh my god.
just needed to rant about something.
Yeah.
See, on our last one, Terry was recording and he just randomly disappeared. Like he just popped out of the meeting and then like 30 seconds later popped back in and it was like recording stopped, recording started. We're like,
Ooh.
hopefully that makes it.
Uh-oh. That'll be good. So
That's why I never want to be responsible for the button pressing because I'm like, I don't want to have to be the one making a mistake and we have to redo it.
That's exactly what I told them afterwards. I was like, this is why I always ask you to be in charge.
we have had to record 4 episodes from scratch
Mhm.
like just because of recording issues. One time it was just consistent thumps that we couldn't release, and another time someone's mic didn't. This is back when we were doing it's like episode 150 or something. It was a while ago. It's always such a pain in the ass. But now we have enough people that we can just be like, hey, someone else record it, so we don't have to like repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
Then it's
Yeah.
weird and stale, and
We already said
remember.
all the good things, so
I can't remember if we told the joke in this episode or the last one, and like it's so
Yeah, that would be the thing, is you'd forget like, the ad lib stuff.
yeah. So do we have a cold open?
We have a cold open.
Sure. Do we have this is about the 5th time that we have tried to record an episode of a crafting, and we've had Dan, Brad, Kyle, Dave, and James all on a crafting episode on the schedule before, and Megan. And so we are finally now getting to sit down and record this. I don't know why. This one the scheduling has been cursed. So
And I like how out of the trio, like this is the first episode, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like we've got the tail end done now, but it's like the first episode we're finally getting to.
Would you guys even be interested in playing in a no combat, just exploration and role playing? Like that's just like a fantasy simulator.
I play in a campaign where it is very low combat. I have played months and months without seeing combat, and it all just being role playing and exploring.
How is that?
It's a lot of fun. I cry a lot in that campaign. It gets very emotional. Like that is where I really stretch my role playing. And the DM is very good at that. But it's like you have to go look for combat. Like if that's what you want, you have to tell him that's what I want. And purposefully go look for it.
God, it would be so different, because then downtime becomes the point, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so many things are solved just like so creatively and not just I'm gonna hit that thing. Like the bad guys, you have to come up with, you can't just run in at them. You have to come up with creative ways to get around that because he does not level sync. So we have characters that are level 1, we have characters that are level 16. In the same party, fighting the same person. So you have to really think about it. And like that level 16, if they run in and hit that bad guy, they know that level 1 partner is probably going to die. So you have to get real creative with your talking and your other things that you have.
That's crazy. That's really cool.
Yeah. Also sounds incredibly mentally draining as the DM.
He runs like 4 games a weekend. That's insane. Like, I don't know how he does that.
Oh shit, it's still me. Okay.
You gotta talk more.
God, fuck.
Then you
Fine,
get
but
a
then I'm
break.
napping. So
Why are you still here? Leave already.